Inkonjane The Lightning Bird as much as we enjoyed making it. It is a one-person show, but there are a whole team of artists that have been involved in making it. And so this is our Meet the Makers film, where you can see some of the people and some of the jobs that were involved in making the show. I hope you enjoy it.
My name is EUGENE SKEEF. I was born and grew up in South Africa, where I enjoyed the music of the swallow, which we call Inkonjane in our Zulu language. I am the composer and musician on the project, and I help my English friends with translations and to know more about the swallow in our culture.
Hi, my name's Natasha and I am the director and dramaturg for Inkonjane. And I'll explain a little bit about what a dramaturg is, because that's possibly something that, that's possibly a description you've not come across before. But just to give you a little bit of my background, I run a theatre company, Telltale Hearts, and that means that I've got multiple jobs. Generally, I'm directing the work, writing the work, sometimes performing the work, and so I've got quite a eclectic mix of theatre making skills. And for this project, I've been working with Lisa on developing the script as dramaturg, and what that means is really pulling the threads together of the different stories that have been researched for Inkonjane, that Zanelle's been researching in South Africa, and that also Lisa has been researching of a more sort of European background. And then from the stories that Lisa selected, making sure that they pull together and that they work to serve the story of the migration. So which part of the journey does each story best fit? So that's kind of what a dramaturg does, really. It's kind of pulling all the threads together and drawing the string to kind of close the bag on the show, if you like.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Constable and I am a theatre designer. And that means that I have designed all of the set and costume for this show, and have also made all of the set as well. I didn't make the costumes, I just designed the costumes, so I drew a little sketch of what I thought they should look like, and then I passed them on to a costume maker called Rachel, and she turned my tiny little sketch into this beautiful jacket that I'm sure you've seen Lisa wear during the performance.
My name's Lisa DIFFORD and I set up Fettle Fable Theatre, and I started off the project for Inkonjane The Lightning Bird. I've produced the show, which means that I've had to find the money, the funding to make the show, which was helped through the Arts Council England, and I pulled together all the artists that were involved in making the show, and I also talk and email with all the schools, arts venues and theatres that the show's visiting.
Sanibonani, it means greetings in my mother tongue, which is isiZulu. I'm Zanele Ndlovu Makopeni. I'm a co-founder and a director at the Novelak Valley Library. We are based in the village of Kwekintaba, located in Lusikisiki, Eastern Cape, South Africa. I'm also an author of children's books, which I write in my mother tongue and then been translated into other languages, including isiXhosa, German, and Sesotho. My role in Inkonjane The Lightning Bird production has been of a story collector, folktales, folklore, music, recitations, myths, and every piece of information that has to do with swallows. I've really enjoyed working on this production, and I've been working with the villagers as well, going around asking people about folktales about swallows. And there was one particularly elder woman, Umakhoza, who narrated a beautiful folktale about a competition of 3 birds building the best nest. And I also enjoyed working with the children around the village, creating music, and one of the songs being Inkonjane.
Hi, I'm Ruth PIGOTT. I'm a theatre designer. I specialise in puppets and props. For this particular project I made puppets and carnival costuming. Challenges with the project. So there's a few challenges with a project like this. So it's things like, because I'm working in this space, this is my work shed, I'm working here alone. So whatever I make, I have to keep in constant contact with other makers to make sure. So I was constantly in contact with Rebecca to make sure that everything that I made was the correct sizing to fit with her set. So it's thinking about practicalities like the size and making sure it will fit within the set or it'll hide within the set. It's okay for transport. It'll fit in the transport. It's easy to transport. Also that it's strong enough, won't break, things like that are all things that you have to sort of think about while you're making things. And then actually making the puppets themselves, you have to contemplate quite a number of things really. So when you're making a creature, I usually sit here actually, this is my worktop, I've got windows here spilling in light, I've got all my bits and bobs all around me and drill bits and saws, anything, it's all in this room. So when I'm thinking of what I'm going to make, I usually put up on my windows reference pictures, particularly if I'm making a creature and it's sort of realistic, so that I get the anatomy correct. So I've always got these reference pictures so that I can look up at them and check the proportions are right and all things like that. But so I need to think about what's needed for that puppet within the story. So you can have like a creature that does all sorts. It might have like legs that move. It's like, you know, in normal life everything moves, but for the story and the puppet you just need to make certain things move that would be relevant for that tale. You don't need to make the whole thing move. Sometimes you don't even need to make the whole body. It depends what you're using that puppet for. So you look at this tale, the story, and see what the most important elements are that are needed for the puppeteer and that puppet, and that's what I'll concentrate on. For example, the swallow. So I know that I've got to make a swallow, so initially I'm thinking, okay, it's a bird, wings come straight to my head. What do the wings need to do? Because there's several different movements wings can do. You can use different mechanisms to do all sorts to make wings move, and each of the different mechanisms mean that the puppeteer interacts with that puppet differently. But with talking to Lisa, it became apparent really fast that actually swallows, they dart around the sky so fast, they whiz past and change directions and do all sorts really quickly, to the point where the wings are moving really fast, you barely notice them, and it's more about the silhouette of the bird that becomes important rather than the wing movement. So that changed the whole thought process of how to make that bird, because it became more about the silhouette. When making the sparrow for this show, things I had to consider were it had to be the same size proportionally to work with the swallow, but the sparrow also needed to do different things. It needs its head to move, so there's a little mechanic, really simple mechanic in that to make its head move, but it also needed to be so that Lisa could just leave it on set and not touch it, so it has to remain upright. So it's about getting the balance right in that puppet so it can just be left and it'll stand upright by itself without a puppeteer needing to hold it. So there's all these little challenges that get sprinkled in on projects, which things that I really enjoy. I like the challenge. I like the fact that every brief I usually get, there's something new in it that I have to think about or consider or try and figure out, and that's what I really love to do.
What's the most challenging part of the project, I think, for me, is really ensuring that you get the best out of people, of all of the contributing artists, in the shortest space of time. And that means that you've got people meeting for the very first time who've never known each other, working really quite intimately on a show and very quickly trying to harness the best of their ideas and get the best of them working when, you know, maybe they're a little bit intimidated or nervous, or even just because of these times that we've been in, not actually having worked in a physical space with people for a while. And the way to overcome that, I found, is by making it as joyous and fun and playful as possible. And so it's basically about creating an environment for play that's not full of judgment. So judgment is kept outside of the room. I often use games as part of it. So we did play Grandma's Footsteps as part of it. We also play a game with the ball, the challenge of trying to get the ball into the nest. And creating a playful environment, but then ensuring that the exercises that we're doing when we are developing material for the show, it has that light quality to it, and so people feel free to be able to put their ideas into our mix, and aren't afraid to kind of say, if they're, oh, what about if we try that? That's the kind of environment you want, is an environment of, oh yeah, maybe we could do that and we could add that other bit to it. So that's the environment you want, and it's the challenge, is creating that in a very short space of time with people you've never worked with together before. I'm sure you know from classes, when you start a new class for the first time and it's a new mix of people, it takes a little bit of a while to get familiar with a new teacher, doesn't it? And it takes a little while to get familiar with new classmates. And it's the same when you're working together as part of a creative team to develop a show. It takes a little bit of a while to find your way with each other, and creating that fun, playful environment is the best way I've found of doing that.
For me, the most challenging part of the Inkonjane project has been to widen the stretch of my wings so that I could travel over land and sea, just like the swallow, and return to South Africa to experience once more the place where Zanele and her community live. Because I couldn't just do that, I decided to close my eyes and listen to the music inside the memory of my heart.
It's been quite challenging when you're doing lots of different roles on the project. So when I'm trying to make shadow puppets, and I'm trying to write, and I'm talking with all the other artists, and emailing schools, and managing all the money. So I've got lots and lots of different jobs, so it's sometimes difficult managing all the different jobs at the same time.
The lockdown and this COVID-19 thing, there's a lot of restrictions. Couldn't actually access other books from other libraries, and it was really frustrating. And working online is just it's so hard, because sometimes there's no network, there's no electricity. So those were the challenges that I was facing, and actually wanted, my wish is for this production to actually come in South Africa so that we can see it live, and for me also to go to the UK and work with the artists there and see the production live. But because of this lockdown, those have been the challenges.
Time. It took a lot of time to put a set together. A lot of the things that we used had to be ordered in from online, which took, for some things like the oil drum, it took 2 weeks to actually get here. And then once it got here, I had to start altering it to suit the set and the design. So for example, I had to put a mountain onto the side of one of them, and we had to scratch them up and kind of batter them a little bit so they looked a bit old and worn and not really shiny and new like I'd just ordered one. Another thing that took a long time as well to make was the city. So that I did that by drawing each building up individually on a computer program called SketchUp, and they took around 3 to 4 hours to draw one building. If it was a particularly complicated thing, it might take a little bit longer on some of the buildings. And then once I'd drawn them on the computer and I was happy with them, I sent them to a 3D printer. So with that, I sent each wall of the building that had to get 3D printed separately, and that took around 11 to 15 hours to print. It's a very long time because there was 4 walls for each building and about 5 buildings in the whole thing, so it did take a very long time. One of the other challenging things as well is that this big set that we needed with a lot of different things in had to fit inside a tiny little car. But it was a really fun challenge though at the same time. I really enjoyed experimenting with a lot of different materials. We went to a lot of different places as we followed the swallow from Yorkshire to Africa, and we got to, I got to make dragons and rapids and play with shadow screen and lighting. So it was also really fun at the same time.
I was blessed enough that at the Novulag Value Library we actually have a book titled Voices of the Forest, this one here, and it actually has a chapter about swallows. I think it's on page 182, where it talks about when swallows building a nest in your homestead, it's considered a good fortune. There's actually a lot of information here about what it says about the swallows, and it was really helpful and useful.
The most fun part of the Inkonjane project for me has been the playful spirit of everyone involved. It has been really fun to bring my handmade musical instruments into the creative team and see how much everyone loves them, and to experience them working well inside the story and design.
Playing with the swallow puppet down the rapids to Eugene's music was definitely a highlight. That was really fantastic. Great fun doing that in the research and development phase. Also having Lisa with some mock-up huge wings as the swallow, doing that in Grandma's footsteps, where she wasn't allowed to move when turned around. That was also hugely great fun. And I think the greatest fun is seeing the chemistry of people when it comes together, that it creates that kind of, well, it's a little bit like a party atmosphere when everyone's buzzing off each other's ideas, and when you start to see it come to fruition. So the point at which we discovered some of that shadow magic, where we were looking at the moon tail, that was such a magical moment of just sitting and feeling, wow. And another huge fun bit was actually sharing some of the work that we'd done with Zanelli over a Zoom call, where she was able to watch some of the recordings of the work that we'd been doing in Yorkshire, and then she was able to give her response, and we could see the environment where she was sat in the library in South Africa, and to feel that connection, that actually where the swallow starts its journey and where we were making this work, working as we were in 2 opposite sides of the seasons. So we were at sort of early summer, and Zanelli of course was in winter, in a South African winter. So we just had the arrival of the swallows, and for them their swallows had left. So it just makes it even more exciting to know the reality of that different geographical situation.
I'll always think about the team that put these stories together for this show from now on whenever I hear a swallow, because it's just been such a joy working with everybody. It's, even though we're all in separate spaces, we came together for the R&D, which was lovely, and then we've all gone off and done our separate parts, but I think that initial meeting really set the tone of everyone. Just, you could tell everybody was really into the project and the stories and wanted the best for this theatre piece.
One thing that I really love about the swallow is the journey that it has been on. To travel from Yorkshire to South Africa is absolutely incredible, and getting to learn all the myths and legends that come along with it along the way has just been absolutely amazing. I've loved following it through the different terrains. So from Yorkshire to Rapids to Johannesburg, to the desert. It's just been absolutely incredible.
The most fun part of working on Inkonjane has been working with all the other artists. We've got artists from the UK and from South Africa working on the show. It was great to have the research and development, which was 2 days where the UK artists came together and we played and we worked through some of the stories that were collected here and in South Africa, and we kind of worked on how we wanted the show to develop. So that was really, really great fun, and it was so lovely to be in a room with all the artists.
The story of the swallow touches me in a very deep way. When I was growing up as a child in South Africa, I used to enjoy watching the swallows dance before the coming of the rain. I used to join these magical birds by imitating their dance moves in the sand. Then I would instantly look back up and I would see a print of my own shadow against the sky. Doing this made me feel free.
I think that because so many different countries and cultures have been fascinated by the swallow because of the sheer distance that they cover in their migration, you can see how different peoples have been fascinated by some of the swallow's characteristics, like, for example, how it feeds on insects so close to the water. And so you have the myth of chasing the dragon in the rapids that originates in Africa, but you also have the myth where fishermen believed that the swallow hibernated under the water during winter. And so you've got two very different kind of myth stories that have evolved, but they've both evolved from a fascination of the characteristic of the swallow. And that's one of the things I love about it, is that you can see how much more we have in common in the way in which we kind of enjoy and celebrate these birds and try and make meaning out of their flight patterns, and that they do have meaning, seasonal meanings for us that are so important and valued in by both cultures, but reflect the different cultures that we have in how exactly they are valued or immortalized.
Overall, I loved working in Inkonjane The Lightning Bird, and I hope that you are also going to enjoy it. I'm so grateful, I'm so thankful. Siyabonga.
Well, I hope you enjoyed our Meet the Makers film for Inkonjane The Lightning Bird, and we're interested to find out about all the people and the jobs that were involved in making the show. Hopefully we'll see you again soon. Till next time, bye-bye.